Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Bringing the Human Back to Human Resources podcast. Thank you so much for being here for another week. And I have the best episode for you yet here. And that is specifically because my guest's last name is Best, which just means that she's the best. I'm sure, Bianca, I'm sure you hear this all the time.
It's always special and very special.
I had a moment last night where I was like, I'm just going to have to do it. Like when you have a last name of Best, you just have to lean in.
Exactly.
So I've leaned in. So everyone, welcome Bianca Best to the podcast. Let me tell you a little bit about her before we dive into a very exciting topic and one that comes with something to celebrate. So Bianca Best is a globally recognized speaker, author, and strategist whose career includes collaborations with some of the world's most influential companies such as Google, Amazon, WPP, Deloitte, Barclays, and Unilever. Now, as an international speaker and strategist, she is dedicated to empowering professionals to achieve extraordinary results without sacrificing their health or happiness. Her latest book, which this is what we have to celebrate, that came out today. It's called Big Impact Without Burnout and offers actionable strategies. There it is on the big screen. Bianca's holding it up. I love it. Offers actionable strategies to help leaders align purpose with performance while navigating the challenges of today's demanding world. With her engaging energy and practical insights, Bianca inspires audiences to embrace a fulfilling and sustainable approach to success. And I must say, I have to double down on that part of your bio because you are so engaging and you're so much fun. And that is why this episode is going to be so much fun. So welcome, Bianca, and kudos and congratulations to you on the launch of your book today.
Thank you. It's definitely a milestone day, and how fantastic that we get to celebrate this moment together. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Of course. I am so deeply honored. And of course, the podcast listeners are going to be like, today, like, when did they record this? Okay, fine. We're time traveling. It's coming out on March 11th. Yes. But I have to say, we're not recording so far away from that. We're calling it today. Today is when the book comes out. We're so excited. And, you know, I'm going to have in the show notes where you can pick up Bianca's book because it is a must read. And I think everyone's going to get a lot of really, really helpful insights out of your book. So with that,
we're not actually really faking it because this really is the beginning of the launch period. I'm actually launching in London in Daunt's bookshop tomorrow, and then I'm going to the US doing my US tour. So this is really the special moment.
That is this is the start of all of your celebrations and all of the launching that you're doing over these next few weeks, it's a great way to put it, actually. Thank you. Thank you for keeping us honest here at the podcast. With that, I think it's really important for everyone to hear your story because it's what really captivated me and why I wanted you to join us on the podcast. So maybe we start there. Where did all of this big impact without burnout come from, and what's your story?
Well, it really comes 100% from the heart and from my own life experience. So I am unashamedly ambitious. I chase my dreams. I reach for the stars. I go, 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 as a lot of us do. But along the way, I kept slamming into walls and burning out. And whilst I was absolutely reaching my dreams and really enjoying life expansion along the way, I really kept pushing too hard, too fast, too far in too many directions simultaneously. So I'll give you the sort of chronology of my work experience and tell you about the sort of burnout undulations that happened simultaneously. So back in 2004, I fell into entrepreneurialism. I was at home with 2 young children and spotted an opportunity to really disrupt the personalized gift marketplace. And I spotted that opportunity because I was in bed breastfeeding a baby, toddler running around the room. Mm-hmm. I realized, it was my then husband and I. It was our 10-year anniversary. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get a gift? I ended up writing a poem called A Decade to Remember, finding a frame at home and putting photos around this poem, which I printed out, gave it to him in the evening. He was like, oh, that's so romantic and lovely. We hung it up in the hall. Everyone that came round to see the baby and visit us was like, oh, where did you order that? And my brain started worrying that maybe that could become a marketable commodity, and off I went. And I just became this relentless entrepreneur, determined to build a business with my double buggy and my twins, my little babies in tow. And I went out and set up a trade manufacturing business, sold these products online, and it just grew and grew and grew. And I had a decade of learning a lot about myself, about expanding from the seeds of a little idea into running an omni-channel global business that was trade and consumer. And it was phenomenal. That chapter came to an end when I found out I was pregnant again. This time it was twins. So I had 4 children under 7 and a business. And it was an intense but invigorating time. And I really took that as a moment where the universe was signaling to me, focus inwards, focus in on family. This is a precious, precious moment. Work will be there forever. Making money will be there forever. Business will be there forever. Just focusing on family. So I did. And I sold that business and enjoyed adjusting to this world of how to sustain little people that are everywhere and keep myself happy. And interestingly, that first year after the twins were born, I can honestly say it was one of the happiest years of my life. And if you'd come around and seen me, my hair wasn't clean and you'd have been crunching on cornflakes on the carpet. It was chaos, but I was so happy because I was so purposeful. And that's a really interesting lesson that I learned. So I sold that business and fell into corporate. And then I've spent the past 12 years ascending corporate ladders and really learning different skills, how to apply myself where I'm in arenas with a lot of people, a lot of work agendas, a lot of politics and stuff that was very different to me when I was being entrepreneurial. I could drive everything in an organization, as you well know. There's rules that need to be adhered to, and it's a different game that we have to play. But I've loved it and I've learned it well. I'm now stepping into entrepreneurialism again, leaving corporate to now work on the burnout business, which is my pride and joy, and hence the book. So in those chapters of having run the business, had a million children, and climbed corporate ladders, and now where I am today, I found that I started falling over into walls of total collapse and burnout from my mid-20s through to my mid-30s, where, yeah, it was fantastic. I had a home now, I had a lawn to mow, I had children to feed, and I had this expanding life, a business that was growing. But I started to really get ill. And I wouldn't get a common cold. I would get pneumonia or bronchiolitis, and I would be in bed for weeks. I was properly being floored time and time again. And then I'd recover and I'd get straight back onto that little life treadmill and keep pushing and going again and again and again. And that became very much a problem because I didn't want to stop chasing my dreams, but I was realizing that I can't function like this, because when I was floored, I'd need help from friends or family or my husband. And when I had my job and I was in a corporate arena, you can't be off sick week after week with constantly. So I started dabbling with, well, how can I self-manage to still do all these fizzy, dynamic, juicy, brilliant things, but not keep falling over? And I finally perfected that. So in 2015, I had my last burnout. I say perfected it. I mean, I learned how to manage. And I'm still a work in progress, but I haven't had a burnout since 2015. And that's what I now have bottled up. And I teach to people and try and encourage everyone to still chase your dreams. It's okay. We just need to have a conscious plan.
Oh, amazing. See, this is why everyone needed to hear that, because your story is so inspiring. And as a fellow twin mom, I do think I can say that twin moms are built a little differently. We are kind of destined, yeah, right, destined for being able to handle maybe a little bit more chaos. But I love that you even just, for a moment of relatability for me, that you talked about that first year after the twins were born. I mean, I totally agree. Mine are almost 16 months now as of the date of this recording. And it's like the most fun I've ever had, even though it's the most hard work ever. It's
Yeah.
just the most fun. And so
Isn't it? You just see, people used to stop me in the street and see the double buggy and they'd be like, oh, double trouble. And I would say,
yep, all the time. I
no,
know.
double blessings. I'm
Yes.
so lucky.
I say the same thing. Even after we were hiking with them this weekend and we brought the stroller and we were like, why did we do this? And we're like lifting it up the terrain. It was a nightmare. But it's so true. I mean, it's all about mindset. I think this is what we're probably going to talk about a little bit today, because so much of what you shared, and actually something I'm going to touch on, is about how we prepare our minds and how we adjust our mindsets to best suit what we need. And one of the things that I wanted to mention is that you talked about how leading a purposeful life, I think that's what you said, leading a purposeful life was the difference for you, that leaning into, your family unit and what you wanted in that moment within your life at that point was really what allowed you to make this connection. So when
Mm-hmm.
you think about leading a purposeful life and really now, it's 10 years since your last burnout, knock on wood, thank goodness. What do you think in terms of like purpose and mindset has allowed you to stay burnout free?
It's honoring my values with total integrity the entire time and not compromising on them. And that was the biggest epiphany for me in my journey to working out how I could self manage and still have all these children and this work and the
Mm,
dynamic life that I wanted. When I first started applying strategies to try and make sure I was functioning well, I really veered towards physical. It was the first thing was like, right, well, I'm physically broken. I keep getting ill. It's the physical. So
mm,
I started trying to improve my diet, cut back on processed foods, eat more nutritionally dense meals. I started focusing on sleep, albeit hard when it's
true.
hard, but making modifications like reducing caffeine to make sure that I could sleep if I got a nap window, stuff like that. I started focusing on exercise. So I was very much in the realm of let's sort out my physicality. And that was good.
Mm,
I got better, but it wasn't enough. So then I was, okay, let's try the mental realm. If you look at all the self help guidance, the well being advice out there, a lot of it veers in the realm of physical and then mental. So I've always been a very strong journaler, but I started really trying to hone the art of journaling, introducing more conscious gratitude and journaling as a spiritual practice, more meditation, mindfulness, really trying to focus on that, soothing the mind. And that definitely helped as well. But it was only finally when I really found the missing piece of the puzzle was the emotional realm. My emotional realm was where I was creating unnoticed stress. And I started to realize that if we are compromising on a particular value, so something that matters to us, something actually we cherish, so whether it's how a team works or who you're married to and what your friendship group is like, or whatever it might be, particular areas of your life that matter to you, if you are compromising any particular aspect of you to be in that environment or in that relationship or in that situation, even if it's slightly subconscious and it might just show up like a little niggle or a little irritation, it is creating systemic stress within the
mm,
body. And as we all know, we cannot live with permanent stress. That is not a state that the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, was created for.
right.
We're only meant to be in a stress state in small fragments and pockets of time. So if we've got an emotional stress that is draining and depleting us, that is also contributing to our ability to show up and be productive and achieve all those dreams and goals. And so for me, once I started to lean into triggers and lean into emotional disquiet, I started to really acknowledge and see and learn more about myself, but really see where I was compromising aspects of me that were too important and I shouldn't be shutting them down. And so I had to do a lot of work and make a lot of very brave decisions to get myself into a place of integrity. And I really came to learn, and this is what I teach all my clients, you will never, ever feel fulfilled if you're compromising on your values. And that's it.
Amazing. I am like as you were I can't even find the words. As you were talking, I was really thinking like I need to just delete social media. Like I don't know why that was like my first thought,
Yeah.
but when you talk about this like constant state of stress,
Yeah.
and I really think about the physiological damage that comes from this constant consumption of very serious things, which inevitably are all over social media,
Yeah.
sometimes funny things too. There's this like dopamine response, and then you have like the stress and dopamine and the stress. And I'm like, I don't know, for whatever reason, I related a lot of what you just said to this this feeling that I get from like scrolling on social media. And the listeners who have been here know I'm always talking about I need to get off of social media, but I can't, but I need to get off. It's like, okay, get over it, Tracy.
If that's your intuitive hit as I'm talking, pay attention to that as well, because this is also something that we don't do enough. We don't trust our intuitive hits. And your subconscious is giving you that little metaphorical punch.
Yeah.
It's
Like,
like, no.
hello, we've been trying to tell you something.
Exactly.
I'm sure that there are listeners who thought of something also. Maybe it's like their
Mhm.
marriage, maybe it's their job, maybe it's like whatever hobby that isn't such a hobby anymore, or maybe it
Yeah,
is social media. So that's actually a really good kind of like activity for us to do. Is like, what is that first thing that you come to that gives you that signal of like, oh, this is a little bit stressful in your life?
totally. Because quite often when we're like, oh, I'm exhausted, life is overwhelming, the first thing we do is like, I must be missing a mineral or order some more vitamins. And actually, if we look at where there is that little rumble of, this doesn't feel good. Like for me, one of the biggest moments, two big moments. Once I was in a corporate environment where I would be walking to the office and I would feel myself shrinking, like physically. I didn't want to go into that office. I was just absolutely struggling with the very concept of a day in that office with those people. And
Mhm.
but I had to do the job because I'd bought this house and I had all the dependents of the children and I needed to stay in that role, but I really was unhappy. And then I just suddenly, well, my instinctive reaction to the unhappiness was I need to work harder. I need to prove myself more. So I would work longer hours, try and overproduce to make myself succeed in that environment. But I wasn't succeeding. And I could see that management weren't happy with me. And that was making me shrink. And I was feeling
Sure.
uncomfortable and frightened because, I started to feel like I couldn't be me in that
Mm.
I cut a fringe. I cut a fringe.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's, somehow because I thought, "Oh, well, this is how you show up in the corporate world."
Totally. That was like
What
when I cut my hair off after college. I'm like, what did I do? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like,
Exactly that, but I thought this would make me fit in and it would make me
yeah.
somehow succeed but I was squashing bits of me. I was totally
Yeah.
compromising myself and even my hair, But I realized I had this epiphany moment of, hang on a minute, it's not this disempowerment is me putting myself in this state of disempowerment. I can empower myself by going, okay, this isn't working for anyone, but it's up to me to conscientiously go, what do I want my working environment to look like? What cultures do I want to work within? And then to go out and find them. And the minute I just had that moment of, I could change it. I don't have to stay. And
Mhm.
I know it sounds like, well, that's obvious. If you're not happy in your job, you leave. But I felt sort of trapped and trapped in a world where I was trying to prove myself that that would make it better. But
Yeah.
then I went, hang on, our values are misaligned. I don't agree with the way they're running the company. That's where this tension is.
Mhm.
I want to be somewhere else. And then I went somewhere else and I was happy.
No, of course. And you know what? I really appreciate that you're talking about the values alignment. Of course, it's an HR podcast. We talk about things like this all the time, but it's because of how important it is for people to recognize that they cannot sacrifice their own values or compromise on their own values and then at the same time find happiness in that company or in that job. It's just impossible. I mean, when someone feel like, even if we put this in another real life situation, if someone's I always talk about relationships. This is not a relationship podcast, but if someone is in a relationship with
Maybe
someone,
that's your
maybe
next
that's my next thing, right? Let the wings flap in the wind. I'm gonna go into relationships next. My husband's gonna be like, please don't. No, I'm just kidding. But like my thought is like you're going on a date with someone, and to me, dating and finding a job very similar. Like when you're interviewing, you are on a date and you're looking for your match. And when you're on a date with someone and they say something or they tell you they believe in something that isn't pretty much an exact contradiction to what you hold as a dear value of yours or a belief of yours, it's not going to work. Like no
No,
matter how many times you try to make the puzzle piece fit, it will not work.
exactly that. Exactly that. Because yeah, if you're not resonant with each other, there's tension and there's energetic depletion because you try and contort yourself to sort of make it fit, and there's no need. There's no need.
No, especially when there are companies out there that are harmonious with our values. I mean, it's
Exactly.
right. Like shared candidly with the podcast listeners a number of about 3 years ago, almost to the day, probably around 3 years ago, when I left a job after 3 months, and it was the shortest stint I had ever done in my career. I'd always had at least 3 years of tenure somewhere,
Wow.
and it was because of a lot of things, but something fundamentally was that there was a values misalignment. And
Mm.
I believe like you have to call things fast. It's either going to work or it's not going to work. And once you realize that something's not going to work, you need to find something else.
Well
And
done. That's
thank
great.
you. Thank you. I sometimes see it as a fail fast, but it's not a fail to realize that something it just isn't the right fit. It's a win.
Exactly. Exactly. Do you know, I sat next to a man once at a corporate dinner, and I'd recently got divorced. And I have a very positive frame around divorce because it's simply evolution.
Mm,
And with my ex husband and I, we just recognized after 26 years, yes, it was sad, but we were evolving separately and differently because our values didn't chime, interestingly.
mm,
But this
mm.
chap that I was sitting next to at this dinner was spilling his red wine and saying to me, "Well, you failed at marriage." And I was like, "No, I didn't fail. We evolved." And that's the thing. It's not
Totally. Okay,
evolution.
Bianca, tell us, did you spill the wine in his face? Did you say, no, listen, I'm just kidding.
he spilled he spilled it
Spilled it on
himself.
himself. Yeah,
Yes, I didn't need to.
that's amazing. He did it all on his own. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. No, but it's so, I mean, again, it all comes back to mindset. When we think of things that might be negative to someone and we see them as a positive force in our lives or something that has a positive current,
Yeah.
there's momentum there. I mean, this is resilience.
Exactly that. And I love where you're, talking about momentum. The first strategy in my book is energy, because actually energy management is what it's all about. And if you follow what energizes you and understand your own energetic rhythms so that you're not constantly chasing, oh, the next high, because
Hmm.
that's not sustainable. But generally, if your life is about pursuing that which energizes you, which tends to be aligned with your values, and you can understand how you can manufacture all the energy that you need and then restore. So you're aware of when you need those restorative, nurturing, gentle moments. If you can weave your way through life, managing your energy, then all of the worries around burnout and productivity, everything seems to recede if you start with energy management.
That's really interesting. I'm sure there are people listening who are like, "Oh, I'm just a runaway train." I used to be that way. I mean,
Yeah.
and as you shared, I think there's a lot of relatability in your story because it's there. I see even myself in your story where it's like, you're just proving yourself, proving yourself, proving yourself, and then you can sometimes lose yourself, the one person that you're doing it all for.
Yeah.
You can sometimes lose yourself in all of that. And when you recenter and you really think about, well, obviously, of course, centralizing your energy, but also thinking about where you're spending your time and how you're expending your energy, all of that, I would
Yeah.
imagine makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's understanding what energizes you, but
Hmm.
also being really tuned into this. There's a new school of psychology called ecological psychology. And this is about our response to different environments and how different environments can stimulate us to do different types of work more naturally. So the example that I use in the book is, think of an Olympic swimmer. The minute she sees the pool, her body is primed and ready. She is just off because she knows that pool represents where she's in her peak performance mode. So, for each one of us, if we think about the different types of work that we're doing, and in the hybrid work worlds that we have today, we'll be working at home, maybe working in a coffee shop, maybe working in the office. It's up to us to really try and identify and hone what are the types of tasks that we do best in which environments, and then to organize our calendars and our geographical bases to honor that and even take it a step further where there's a ritual that kind of gets you into that mode in that particular environment. So you kind of hone your brain. So you're optimizing yourself into this system of, this is where I do this kind of work. And
Yeah.
then you're primed and you're ready to go.
Totally. I love that. I mean, I think there's definitely something there because even when I'm sure that you can relate to this also as a mom, but I really love a change of scenery. There's nothing needed more, especially on the weekends when it's kind of just
Mhm.
you and your spouse, or maybe just you and you're with the kids and you're like, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of this house. And it's
Very
kind of the
important.
same thing with work, right? It's like when you
Yeah.
give yourself a different environment to thrive in, and you sometimes some work is just done better outside of the house, or some work is done better outside of the office. And it does also make me wonder, this is maybe a more statistical question, but it makes me wonder a little bit about how some of this can be um, more or less seen depending on someone's gender. And I ask that because for the listener base, around 80% are female.
Hmm.
And so, of course, that is pretty indicative of the HR industry and where we tend to see not women in business, but at least the HR profession, the kind of the makeup, the demographics. Have
Yeah.
you seen from your clients or even in the work that you've done with your book where gender plays a role in burnout, if at all?
Sadly, yes, women are hit with burnout at a higher rate than men.
Hmm.
And that's attributable to a number of different factors, but probably one of the core ones is that we still hold around 68% of the emotional and domestic labor at home.
Hmm.
So we've got the added stress as well as work of all of the that emotional labor, domestic
Hmm.
labor at home. So yes, we have a higher burnout rate, and um, we have a tendency towards perfectionism across the board.
No, you don't say.
You know too well. But that
Totally.
has been perpetuated by the technological explosion and the
Totally.
pandemic, where so we've got two technological impacts. So one is the fact that social media is portraying this world where everyone's a high performer and a high achiever and everyone's got it going on and they're amazing. And so we're just sort of scrolling it. Oh my God, well, I should be that too.
Yeah.
And then you've also got this always on factor that has just really crippled us with this almost acceptance that that's the norm. During the pandemic in Europe, we went from working across Europe standard of 8 hours a day through to 11 hours a day as the norm. And we've really struggled to get back to normal working hours,
Mm.
and it's because there are no boundaries and it's all blurred. And so many of my clients put the children to bed to get back onto the laptop to do work until they fall asleep, and there's none of that nurturing, nourishing me time that is so essential.
Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, I think this is where we're almost at a crossroads, I feel like societally from a business standpoint. We see, a whole host of companies saying, especially in the US, you must be back in the office. There's no negotiation on this, like 5 times a week, excuse me. And then there are still companies like the one that I work for where, remote is what it is, and remote first and flexibility and all of that. And then, of course, there's in the middle, there's this hybrid approach. But what that tells me is that everyone is trying to figure out what
Mhm.
works best for their business, what works best for their people. How
Yeah,
do we get the most out of people? Because that's kind of just the way that business works. It's like, how do we get the most productivity out of people?
yeah,
And for some companies, it's like getting the most while giving the least. And
yeah,
then, it's also for for the people, for the employee, they are trying to balance what they want out of their careers while also prioritizing themselves. And I think generationally, we see Gen Z doing this probably the best. One of
mhm,
the things that I thought about when you were talking about just in general at the top of our recording, where, you know, we think about our values and how they align or don't align with companies. And Gen Z is a really good indicator of
mhm.
how I think generations are changing and saying, oh, this doesn't work for me, I'm out. and I
Yeah.
don't care if I have a job lined up or not. And for them, it doesn't matter if even my husband actually the other day told me that Gen Z is, it's really amazing. I'm kind of inspired by them, but they are retiring after 3 years. So they're doing 3 years on, 1 year off, 3 years on, 1 year off.
Wow.
And
Oh,
I did
wow.
not fact check my husband. I will just put this out there now. I generally just kind of fully trust what he says because he's a very intelligent person, but he like found it somewhere and I have to find it now. If I can find an
Yeah,
article
yeah.
to this, I'll send it to you and I'll post it in the show notes. But this is kind of like a transformation. If this is what happens, I can't even imagine how that will impact the workforce. But I share this because I
Mm,
also am curious if there are any generational studies that you can share with the podcast
mm,
listeners. But in general, let's just say, I
yeah,
mean, we see that there is another major shift potentially coming at the hands
yeah.
of Gen Z, really being transformational within
That's
the workplace.
Yeah, I didn't realize how extreme that was. A lot of the work that I'm doing at the moment with large organizations and smaller businesses where I consult around burnout prevention, and what the businesses are struggling with is mass absenteeism, low
Hmm.
employee engagement, and the cost of long-term sick leave. And actually, if we look at the whole macro burnout landscape, it's costing the world, it's meant to cost the global economy $1 trillion a year.
Oh my
So
gosh. Wow.
burnout costs the global economy $1 trillion a year. And the majority of this is attributable to being lifestyle based and preventable. So this low employee engagement, this high absenteeism is all to do with the individual self management and the fact that they are not necessarily managing themselves optimally. So I love what you've just shared in terms of Gen Zers just going, nope, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm off on holiday.
Yeah.
Because actually, what we're seeing generally, the organizations I work with, is people reaching a place of total, utter overwhelm where they then crash and they're out and
Hmm.
they're gone. And so I'm being asked by businesses, well, what can we do to
Sure.
try and manage this? And I'm coming at this from a place of empowerment for the individual. So it's not about blaming the company or blaming the employer, but actually self managing in such a way where we shift into a place of graceful productivity instead of frenetic productivity. Because that what's happened over recent years. We're in this flurry of produce, 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 because economic contraction means
Hmm.
workforces are potentially smaller, and yet the work still needs to get done, and it's all about output, and people are being measured on volume of output
Yep.
rather than quality.
Yep.
So there's so many stressors that are impacting how people are working, but actually to blame the employer or blame the company isn't the solution, I don't believe, because we have the autonomy to actually understand how we can self manage so we can thrive. Now, if we are in a role where at any level, I'm talking about entry to mid, right up to senior, at any level, we have got to manage our energy so we can show up every day and deliver. If we are in a role where we are feeling our values are compromised, so we are emotionally stressed, we are not particularly enjoying the tasks that we're doing or the people that we're working with, we are spending 80% of the day in a very miserable, stressful state, which is going to be depleting and depleting energy. So we are way more likely to roll into a permanent state of burning out. So it's up to us to look at the role and go, hang on a minute, how much of this do I enjoy? And really, you want to have an 80-20 ratio. You want 80% of the time to be stuff that invigorates you, stuff you can get lost in and have a bit of flow time doing it, stuff where you're learning and growing, stuff where you've got a bit of autonomy, because we want that.
Hmm.
It's all to
Hmm.
do with the sort of self development theory. When we've got those parts, we're generally going to feel energized. And that little 20% of the boring administrative stuff that we don't like, the weekly meeting or whatever it is, it shrinks that, because 80% of the time we're energized and we're
Yeah.
happy with what we're doing. But it's up to individuals to do that. So if the organization is saying, well, you've got to do all these projects in this amount of time, and it's not something that you can naturally do or are aligned with, get out.
Mm. I can't think of a better place to kind of leave the listeners and their thoughts. I think that is exactly the message that we can close off with, because you've shared so many amazing insights. I'm just really endlessly inspired by you and your journey and your story and everything. And I really sincerely hope, and I feel confidently that the listeners are going to feel similarly, if not the same. And so, with that, I'm so excited that your book is officially out as of the time this podcast launches. But also, obviously, you are getting everything kickstarted over in London. But where can the listeners get your book? Where can they connect with you? Where can they learn more about you and maybe even work with you as part of, your client base?
Thank you. Well, I would love to work with anyone, individuals or organizations, and obviously geography is not a problem. So my website, biancabest.com, is where you can find information about the types of work that I do, the books that I've written, and how to connect with me. And then please buy my
There it is. Ooh, is that the
book.
hardcover?
Yes.
Ooh, I love a hardcover book.
And it's actually
Yeah.
endorsed by Ariana Huffington. So
Oh,
I'm really,
wow.
really, yeah,
That's
privileged.
amazing.
Yeah, she's given me. Shall I read it? If I can actually
Yes,
read.
please.
Ariana Huffington says it's a guidebook full of practical steps, tools, and strategies showing women how to transform manic busyness into meaningful productivity, both at home and at work.
Okay, Ariana Huntington. That's amazing. But really, I should say Bianca Best. I mean, you, like I said at the top of this call, I mean, you are really putting your last name, at the top here. You received that last name because you earned it. That's amazing.
But you know what? The main message I want to share is around hope and optimism, because I feel so many people feel, oh God, I don't even want to go for that promotion, or
Mm.
I'm not going to chase that dream. And actually, I hope that I can inspire that it is absolutely possible to define your version of success and stop chasing a myth of having it all that is someone else's, and just step into your perfect integrity. And I promise life will be magnificent.
There you go. Wise words. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I know I don't have to wish you the best of luck, but I'm wishing it to you anyway, because I know that you're going to get it all. But best of luck with the book and everything. I can't wait to see your continued success as you continue to, promote your book and all that you do. So
Thank you. Thank you
of
so much
course.
for having me. And likewise, thank you for being so inspiring and being an amazing twin mum.
Twin moms unite. Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. And for the listeners, all of the links will be in the show notes, so don't even worry about getting a pen and paper if you're still old school like me. Everything will be easily clickable for you. Bianca, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, just before you go, don't forget to subscribe to this show so that you are the first to hear when an episode drops each week. And maybe leave a 5-star review and a comment about how much you loved this episode. Plus, if you have someone in mind who would really enjoy this episode, make sure you share it with them. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week.